We need our parents' validation and love and emotional support so much, we will disconnect ourselves from ourselves in order to try to connect with our parent. And so that's what you've learned how to do. Hey guys, welcome back. It's Missy. Today we're going to talk about the hidden ways childhood emotional neglect can affect you. Generally, when you think about abuse, you think about verbal abuse or physical abuse or sexual abuse. You may see it more as like when you get hit, when you get, maybe you don't get your needs taken care of, your physical needs taken care of. You may think about getting verbally attacked or manipulated. When you think about those are things that have happened to you, but there's not enough conversations on what didn't happen for you. And that's where childhood emotional neglect comes into play. So maybe no one yelled at you and no one hit you, but no one saw you either. And that absence leaves invisible wounds that alter who you become. So that's why today we're going to talk about how emotional neglect wires the brain and how it can affect you. Before we get started, if you struggle with anxiety, I highly recommend you check out my book, Anxiety at the Root. We dive deep into the mind and the body, how to connect them one so you no longer suffer with anxiety. Root link is down below. Please go check it out. With that being said, let's get into today's video. First, let's define what emotional neglect is. A lot of the times it goes unnoticed because people attribute, like I said, the abuse to physical and emotional and verbal. So they're like, okay, I have my physical needs met, they bought me stuff, they took me places, I was good, so it can't be that bad. They completely dismiss themselves. But in reality, emotional neglect is when your parents don't really talk to you, they don't invest time into you emotionally, they don't know what's going on with you, they don't know what's going on in your life, you're kind of left to your own devices. You may be able to be on the computer as much as you want, you can go, you have no curfew, you can do whatever you want, or maybe you do have a curfew but they don't care what you're doing. Like, there's not a lot of investment emotionally. They don't care about your emotions. They may ignore you when you're feeling down. They may tell you to kind of get over things. They don't really care about your emotional state or how you're feeling. They only are like, are you physically good? Okay, then I did my job. This affects you in many different ways, especially because as children, we don't need just our physical needs met. We need emotional stability. We need parents that teach us how to live in the world. How do we regulate our emotions? Because we have emotions, they're here for a purpose. How do we survive in this world with all of these big emotions and all of these different adverse things we're going to be dealing with in life? So first, we're going to go into how it affects the brain. Any type of abuse, including emotional neglect, it affects many systems, but the two major systems and parts of your brain that affects is the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system. Your prefrontal cortex is responsible for your emotional control, for your self-awareness, and for your decision making. So we'll go into that in a second. The other part is the limbic system, which also has to do that in the system is your fight or flight. This is your system that goes off when you feel threatened. When you have any type of abusive situation in your upbringing because you're a helpless child, your nervous system will go off. You will feel more threatened because your life feels at risk since you don't have safety. You don't have a stable home. There is emotional unpredictability in emotionally neglectful homes. So when you are on high alert, you'll have an overactive nervous system, which will send cortisol, which means you always have a stress hormone running throughout your body. You'll be hypervigilant. You may feel constantly in danger, unsafe. You don't feel like you have a place in the world. You don't feel like you have a home. So you will be chronically stressed. And when you're chronically stressed, it shrinks the side of you that you have more cognitive ability because your limbic system is on high alert. So it hinders your growth for cognitive abilities. It hinders your growth to think more logically and more calmly. So that's why when it comes to your prefrontal cortex, you will be more emotionally dysregulated. Your prefrontal cortex will struggle with the ability to emotionally regulate, and that is triggered by the amygdala. So two major things: you'll be more chronically stressed and you'll be emotionally dysregulated. Now this affects you in many different ways. One being that emotional neglect teaches you to ignore yourself. So you learn how to deal with your emotions through your parents, whether that's you visually see them, how they deal with it, or they tell you how to deal with it. Usually it's a combination of both. If you have a parent that dismisses all of your emotions and they show that they're kind of cold, you then ignore yourself. When you suppress your feelings, you start to you don't learn how to be in tune with yourself, and you start to ignore yourself. So your intuition won't be really that strong. You don't really learn how to trust yourself. You learn that your emotions are unsafe by being told to not feel them. So in turn, that means you will downplay your needs. When you need something, you may not give yourself that need. You may be like, oh, it's fine, like I can handle like my phone being broken. I'm guilty of doing that. It doesn't matter if I have broken shoes, like I'm fine with it. I'll just go until I can't wear them anymore. Or you may be really sad and you're like, it's so wussy to be sad. I'm not gonna be sad, I'm gonna ignore it. I'm gonna go out party, I'm gonna go invest myself in work. I just need to keep working, or I just need to keep working harder so that way I don't feel this anymore. And it also can cause you, since you're not paying attention to your own emotions, it may cause you to pay attention a lot to other people's emotions. And this may be in childhood because your parents neglected you so much emotionally and you crave connection so badly, you would try to pay attention to their emotions, try to see how they were feeling. So you would try to guess how they were feeling, you would try to find ways to make them happy, and you may carry that on into other people, especially if you go into relationships with people that remind you of your parent. So overall, you completely disconnect yourself to survive, and you have no idea what your needs are. We need our parents' validation and love and emotional support so much, we will disconnect ourselves from ourselves in order to try to connect with our parent. And so that's what you've learned how to do. The next one, it changes the way your brain handles stress. When you don't have anyone that soothes you and teaches you how to soothe yourself, you don't have those skills. And that leads you to learn how to deal with stress on your own. That means that your amygdala starts to overly detect threats and danger and becomes overactive. So now you may not feel like you can ever really relax. You may be always constantly looking for outlets when you are feeling stressed, and you probably feel stressed most of the time, and you don't know how to soothe this stress. So you may be someone that tries to distract themselves by being constantly on your phone. You may try to distract yourself by going on lots of dates. You may distract yourself by overly traveling. You're just always looking for outside stimulation to deal with your stress, and it temporarily makes you feel better, but in the long run you're always constantly stressed and you never feel good, and you can never just be sitting still. Next, it affects how you connect with others. So naturally, when you are neglected, when you are taught to abandon yourself, you will feel disconnected from yourself. And when you're disconnected from yourself, it's hard to connect with others. You don't know who you are, you don't know what you like, you don't know what you're looking for in a friend or a relationship, so you have a really hard time connecting to others. Or even you may attach lightly to others out of the fear of being abandoned or not being liked or shamed for being who you are. You will crave closeness, but it will feel uncomfortable or even maybe gross when you do try to get close to somebody else, and then you will withdraw, and it creates confusion in your relationships. You were taught and made to believe that people aren't safe, or even I can only rely on myself, especially if you were neglected emotionally by your parent, you were abandoned by them. So then you're like, okay, I can't rely on the people I'm supposed to rely on, so I can only rely on myself, and there's no one that's really safe who I can rely on. Your parents are supposed to teach you who feels safe to rely on, and so you didn't really get that. Not feeling safe means a lack of ability to connect with other people. You don't know what to trust, and the world feels very unsafe. Next, it leaves you with a weak sense of self. So you learn who you are through trial and error, by doing things. You learn who you are by the validation you receive by other people. When you don't receive any of that, you're not really sure who you are, especially when you feel like you have to rid yourself in order to get some type of love or affection from your parents. You never really do. You don't know what feels right. We get a sense of identity when we hear things from our parents like, I'm proud of you, I love this about you, or even validating and mirroring their feelings of like, I see you're sad today. That is so important. It acknowledges the child for who they are and what they're feeling. When you don't have that, you grow up unsure of what you like, what you want, who you are, and what you're feeling. And you may just become a shell of a person, a people pleaser. You look around to see who you should become. You might feel like a chameleon adapting to your surroundings. And not only that, but you have a really hard time identifying your emotions. So you may notice that you're feeling something, but you may not be able to put a name to it. You're not really sure what you're feeling, why you're feeling it. Again, it's that lack of self-awareness and that lack of ability to feel your emotions truly. And so then there's always that dismissive nature of like, okay, I can't feel this emotion, or I don't know what this is, but I want it to go away. And the last is you may feel empty, but you don't know why. Whenever like my clients or anyone comes to me and they say they feel empty or that they have a hole right here, that's from the lack of love they didn't receive in childhood, especially from their mom or their dad. It is a disconnect from a motherly nurturing or a fatherly safety. And also it's a disconnect from your emotional self. So you could have everything look good on paper, good job, good life, good family, like you created the family that you desired, but you could still feel this emptiness. And it's really because you didn't receive that love and warmness and that soothing and that comforting from a parental figure. You never learned through that how to love yourself and how to connect with yourself. So you'll always constantly have this emptiness, and you're probably seeking for ways to fill that emptiness, but never really anything fulfills it. The emotional connection to yourself never fully formed, and so you don't know how to fill that hole inside of your heart. But the good news is that you can heal from this, and you can rewire your brain so that way you no longer are feeling stressed. You don't have this emptiness inside of you, which we'll go into the next video. If you like this video, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what you think. Share your story. Have you dealt with emotional neglect? Can you relate to any of this? Let us know. You're not alone. Until next time, thanks for watching. Bye, guys. Your prefrontal... No, I gotta talk about healing the inner child. I sound like... What is that girl? Is it The Impossibles? I'm gonna leave it right here. The little short little lady. What was her name? Edna? I think it was Edna. What are you doing? You know what destroyed me? Monsters, Inc. What happened in the end? I don't like movies where they have to leave it to the imagination. I want you to tell me what happened, because I got imagination. I can think of lots of things. Tell me what happened. Did they connect again? I don't want this Monsters Inc. University. I don't care about their college life. What happened to Boo? What does she look like? Are they still friends to this day? Somebody tell Pixar to make that movie. Let's go back.